Good afternoon and welcome once again to Pastor's Perspective, sponsored by Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, California. Great to be with you. My name is Phil Ross. I'm sitting in for Brian Perez today. So glad to be with you here on this Friday, February 23rd edition. And this afternoon, answering your questions until 4 o'clock Pacific time. We are pleased to have in the studio today Brian Broderson, Senior Pastor of Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa. And he's brought a friend along today, a guy that I got to say just doesn't have enough to do in life. I think that we really need to keep this guy occupied. Ed Stetzer, he's an American. He's an author, a pastor, and Christian missiologist. He is Dean and Professor of Leadership and Christian Ministry at Talbot School of Theology at Biola University. Biola University, still open, still working, still cranking out top quality stand-up theologians.
It's doing great, having some record years right now. So, yeah, it's doing great.
Awesome. And also, because we just love to blow your horn. And so I hope that's okay. You're also the visiting scholar at Wycliffe Hall at this little junior community college in Britain, Oxford University as well. Ed, you're a pretty sharp guy. Don't you think you could aim a little higher than?
Well, I try to hang around people like you guys, and that helps me to achieve more things. And we went to Oxford together. We were at that very Wycliffe Hall together.
We were, and we had a fantastic time. And I hope to revisit that.
Yeah, I got to respond to Sarah Yardley's email about going back to the UK literally today.
Yes, because her and I were talking, and I said, wasn't Ed maybe going to come?
And she said, I forgot about
Ed. Oh, yeah, but, he never answers his emails.
I do answer my emails, smart Alex. I told her that I needed to check on a few things, but I love the fact that you guys help partner in Creation Fest, which is the largest outside Christian gathering in Europe, right? It's
No.
It's huge.
I mean, it is.
How do you get how many thousands of people and not be the largest?
Well, pre-COVID we had about 11,000, but no, some of those festivals they really pack.
They were for me, my spiritual life was really impacted by Jesus Orlando back in the day, Calvary Assembly of God. Mm-hmm. There's Jesus festivals.
Yeah,
it was kind of coming out of the Jesus People movement, same with the same musicians, and I told you that, I went every year with my girlfriend, now wife.
Yep.
And I told you I've never spoken at one, and so you arranged it, and now I got to see if I can do it.
Yes, you've got to do it. And then remember, you and I were talking about a end of May that you were going to maybe come up to York, and you were going to speak at the conference up there because you're going somewhere from Oxford, you're going to Europe.
To Poland. I'm going to the European Leaders Forum. So I forgot that. So after the show, we need to see where that fits on.
That's what I said to Sarah. I said, I'll be with Ed today, so we'll get it.
Because I'm also going to try to, we have an extension at the Talbot School of Theology in Kyiv. Mm-hmm. We're training seminary students in Kyiv still. Wow. Yeah. And I may or may not be doing something in that place that I can't mention because I don't want to freak out the insurance people at Biola University. Yeah. But we might do something there because the kingdom of God in the time of war is a great topic to do right from Kyiv.
Boy, absolutely. I just got an update from one of the chaplains for the Ukrainian military who is kind of we support her.
Right.
And she gave an update yesterday that really was kind of discouraging.
It's not going great.
She said the morale is tremendously low among the troops. She's given us 4 or 5 updates over the past couple of years. So, tomorrow is the 2-year anniversary of the beginning of the war.
And you've had Phil Metzger, on the program.
Oh, Phil's on every Thursday, yeah.
He's on I didn't know that. Okay, every Thursday. And so you guys, he's been very involved there in Ukraine and more.
Phil's been very involved. Yeah, so we've had 25 Calvary Chapel churches in Ukraine.
Wow.
So,
the time I went to, where did I go? Bucharest. And
Budapest. You went to
Budapest. That's Budapest. Mm-hmm. And then we went up to that training center, the Bible College.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And what a great group of students. Yeah. And Phil was, at that time, pastoring in Budapest.
He was, yeah.
And I forget, there was a castle like that. You have a lot of castles in Calvary Chapel world. Yeah. And they had a map on the wall of all the Calvary chapels in Eastern Europe. And I got to tell you, Brian Broderson, Phil, I was just really, I was impressed. Just what the Lord has done throughout Europe. And just think of, here we are, Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, but to see a map filled with Calvary chapels in Europe. And of course, I preached in Rome for your friend there. And so it was fun.
Yep. It was great.
And I just want to invite everybody, just real quick, just want to get this in here, to if you want to call in and ask your questions of Pastor Brian and Ed, please call us at 888-564-6173 on Pastor's Perspective. Get involved in the conversation. Again, the number to call, it's on the bottom of your screen if you're watching the live stream on YouTube and Facebook. The number is 888-564-6173. And Ed and Brian, coming up very soon, there's going to be a conference where you don't have to travel to a dangerous war zone. It's the CGN International Conference coming up. Yep. What can we be looking forward to that? It's more than just helping the pastor to schedule the tuner for the pipe organ and scheduling the next
Phil just drops the tuner for the pipe organ. I love that. I should have invited him to Moody Church. We actually, when I was the interim there, we actually had to tune the pipe organ. So that's a true thing.
Well,
Phil, were you ever around when we had the big pipes up on the wall?
Yes.
Yeah. So we had our own version of the pipe organ.
Did it actually work?
Well, the pipes were electronic.
They looked cool.
They looked authentic.
I'm going to tell you a little secret about this, and then we can talk about this. So if you look at a picture of Moody Church, which, I was the interim pastor there for 4 years, and very across the front, those who are watching on Facebook can see me hold this up for the fellas here. Across the front of those giant pipes from the pipe organ, those are all fake.
Yeah.
Yeah. So So there's most kind of elaborate, ornate pipe organs have a fake facade and then behind it is the actual pipe organ. So there's a very big, very expensive pipe organ at Moody Church, Chicago. I bet some of our listeners probably have visited Moody Church at some point. But the facade is fake and the pipe organ's in the back. So there you go. So there might be a parable in there.
Yeah, but we had a similar thing. We didn't have as many pipes, but we did have some pipes on the...
Well, Moody Church is built 100 years ago.
The people would come for their first visit to Calvary Chapel, and they're coming to the hippie church. That's what they have in their mind. And they walk in and they're like, wait, what's going on here? What are those things? What are those pipes up on the wall?
Are they still there now?
Organs. No.
Okay. Because that's right. I came back when I was a brand new professor. I said to my mission agency that hired me as a professor, I want to go to 4 churches to kind of see what they're doing that's changing the world. And one of them was Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa. And that was 35 years ago. Yeah. And I came on a midweek at that point, and it was fascinating. And so now I've been here, and of course it's all updated. There's no pipes, there's no pews. There were pews back then, right?
There were pews.
Yeah, like they're actual pews.
Yeah. And they were comfortable pews. Yeah.
Well, not there anymore though. Now they're comfy seats.
No, they're seats. Okay. Yeah. So June 23rd through 26th, we are having our International CGN Conference. This is a conference for people in ministry, specifically for pastors and those in that kind of leadership. But we open up the doors to youth pastors and children's ministry people and all that. And this year, as we're kind of planning things, we're looking at the first epistle of Peter. And it just seemed like a really appropriate text for the time that we're living in. And so the theme is suffering, hope, and glory, or hope, suffering, and glory. So Peter kind of covers all of those themes. We're going to go through the book. Ed, you're going to come. And
I am going to be there. And I'm going to come preach from 1 Peter 4:10,
yes,
which says, as each one has received a special gift, use it to serve one another as good stewards of the manifold grace of God. And I'm going to focus on, because that whole section's end-time ethics.
Yes, right, exactly.
And, of course, when we say end times, people think different things, but we're talking about from Jesus' resurrection forward, end-time ethics. And I'm going to talk specifically about how do we engage, because remember, we're pastors and church leaders as our audience. It's the Calvary Global Network, for those who don't know what CGN is. And I'm going to talk about how pastors and church leaders engage all of God's people in God's mission. Remember, each one has received a special gift, not just the pastors. Yeah. So that equipping ministry.
Yeah. So it's going to be fantastic. We've got a great lineup of teachers. Our good friend James Meeks is going to be with us, Ed.
The amazing James Meeks, the Bishop of Chicago.
Yeah, and James is going to speak on, I really wanted James to do the passage there in chapter 5 at the beginning where Peter addresses the shepherds of the church.
Yeah,
as a fellow
elder exhort you.
Elder, yeah. And
James, he just finished so well in his church. Yeah.
After 40 plus years of planting and pastoring. So that's going to be great. Dan Kimball was on the radio with us yesterday.
I saw you on your Instagram. Dan, the amazing, is his hair still as amazing as ever?
Yeah, as ever. Yeah, he's great. And Dan's going to be with us, and then a number of Calvary Chapel pastors, leaders.
I see John Dixon's coming back.
John Dixon, yes, Dixon. I forgot about
Australian John Dixon, because we had him at Wheaton together. I hired him, and didn't you take him as a professor?
No, I was.
You finished all your degree.
I was finished, yeah. But through you, I kind of knew John.
You knew John from the Undeceptions podcast.
Yes,
that's great.
And John is fantastic, and he's written such a great book.
He's got an Australian accent, which makes him sound smarter just when he talks about anything.
Yeah.
Are we all like assigned, like James, you mentioned, is doing the flock? We're all assigned to text?
Yeah, everybody's assigned to text. Okay. Yeah. And John's going to do. He's going to do the passage on suffering, where in the early church, kind of looking at the early church context of that. So
I love it. It's unusual for conferences nowadays as kind of a bit of a professional conference speaker, a motivational speaker living in a van down by the river, as I am. It's unusual for conferences to set passages and to do that. So I love that. But that's, Calvary Chapel, expositional preaching.
And, we generally always, we always have a theme, and we always sort of assign maybe, like last year we did the great text from Luke chapter 4, the Spirit of the Lord is upon me, and we just walked through that text, where Jesus is quoting from Isaiah. But it's been a while since we actually did a journey through a book of the Bible.
Right.
So this year we thought, we need to get back and just go through a book of the Bible. 1 Peter seems to be great. So anyway, it's going to be a fantastic time, and just giving you guys a little bit of a heads up.
So where do they go to sign up? And
I've got that.
Yeah. Phil's ready to fill in his amazing
chomping
radio
at
voice.
the bit
Come
right
on,
here.
Phil. I'm sorry, we talk too much. Brian and I hang out too much in overseas.
No, this is great. No, I hate to interrupt, but come join us for the CGN International Conference. Again, that's June 23rd through the 26th. And to find out all the information online, go to conference.calvarychapel.com. That's conference.calvarychapel.com.
Yeah, great. So, Ed, you just came from, you said you came from something talking about evangelism.
Yeah. So we had
in Orange County.
So we had a gathering at, the folks at Trellis. It's kind of an Orange County, they facilitate, partnerships and ministry.
Yeah.
And so Ian Stevenson.
I know him.
He asked me if I'd host a gathering. And for me, because I'm new, I've only been here a few months. So basically it was a gathering, you've heard of, and Phil's heard of the Luis Palau Association.
Sure.
So, they continue to do great work, and they're helping form E-teams, evangelism teams. I just came from Phoenix. We did something in Las Vegas, and they're trying to get together people particularly interested in evangelism to talk about how to, collaborate together. So we had we hosted at Biola University, and so I just came from there. I had to leave early. I had to close in prayer, and then get a little exhortation, because I think that we can go, if you think back, here we are. I refer too much to Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, but I'm kind of just historically obsessed with what the Lord did here. And, the conversion ratio, Donald Miller, not the one who wrote Blue Like Jazz, but the scholar at USC, he called Calvary Chapel and Vineyard and Hope Chapel movement reinventing American Protestantism. And part of that was a real passion for evangelism.
Yeah.
And I think that's waned. I don't think that wanes. I can show you statistically how evangelism is not on the mind of the average Christian anymore.
Yeah.
But you remember back in the early Calvary Chapel days just how much it was on the mind of everybody. Everyone needed Jesus one way.
Yeah.
And so, we're trying to facilitate how do we increase that, because I think evangelism's fallen on hard times.
The interesting thing about that, because I lived through that.
You sure you did.
And it wasn't... It was just an extraordinary move of the Spirit where, nobody told you, okay, now that you're saved, go evangelize.
Right.
I don't even think we knew the word evangelize.
Right.
You just were talking about Jesus to anybody.
One way.
And everybody you met. Yeah.
I remember talking to Cheryl, your wife, and she was just talking about how it was grace, and everyone tell people more about grace and what Jesus did. But I think that, so when I think we hear evangelism, we may think, let's go to this class, or the guy who does the Greg Laurie, what do they call it, the Harvest Crusade. And so it's all these different leaders, like the crew people were there, and the navigators people were there. It was a great meeting. Child Evangelism Fellowship. I don't want to leave people out. Apartment Life.
Yeah.
But I think that now we have to plan it because people have often forgotten it. And I think we still, I'm for, we need to do more, inviting people to large group meetings. But But, the reality is that and it wasn't just in the Jesus People movement, in the 50s. Yeah. Before that, Christians just thought it was their job to tell other people about Jesus.
Yep.
And today they might think it's their job to invite a friend to church. Mm-hmm. But we actually, I got some stats that show that about, the most common answer to how often do you tell people about Jesus per year, the most common answer is 0. Mm-hmm. And it's more than 50% of people say, I just don't ever. And then if you ask them, what if you just invite people to church? The most common answer is still 0, and it's about 40% never invite anybody to church. Anyway, they get to 1, you get it to about 60%.
Yeah.
So, we want, and I know you want, we've talked about this, we want our listeners, men and women who love the Lord, to tell people about Jesus. It's part of, what we're doing, our passion at Talbot. We want students at Biola and Talbot. One of the reasons all our undergrads take 30 hours of Bible is they take a course in evangelism, too. We want them to come out in the sciences or in the cinema world and tell people about Jesus. I know you do, too.
Yeah, and I think, going back to those days, there was, the atmosphere was different in a lot of ways, and there was an openness among people that you haven't seen that in the past few decades, where people wanted to engage. But I do think, on a positive note, I kind of feel like those days are coming around again. I think that whenever the world kind of starts tilting in the wrong direction, people start thinking about things that they're not normally thinking about. So, the Jesus People movement, what sometimes people forget is it came in the midst of radical social disruption.
Right.
So the culture was going kind of crazy at the time.
And I don't know if you remember, but we had, when you were doing your master's, we had David Brooks in class.
Yes, yeah.
And we talked about his article on America's going through a moral convulsion.
Yep.
And one of the things and I kind of took that and said, I don't think it's just America, it's the globe, and it's not moral, it's cultural. Mm-hmm. But every 60 years, he wrote in that article in Atlantic, America goes through, and I would say the world goes through, a cultural convulsion. And the last cultural convulsion we had was in the 60s, and we got the Jesus People movement out of it.
Yeah.
And the cultural convulsion we had before that, just based on his timeline, he didn't map them over religious things. Mm-hmm. We talked about it in class. The time before that was actually about late 1800s, early 1900s. We got the Welsh revival and the Pentecostal movement, both, by the way, deeply impactful in Southern California. So historically, cultural convulsions are accompanied by spiritual temperature increases. Yeah. And I think we have some evidence that we're seeing some of that already. I'd like to see more, but it's going to take all the listeners right now across all the different places people are listening and say, how do I show and share the love of Jesus? How do I personally Christians love evangelism as long as somebody else is doing it. We got to love evangelism ourselves and do it as well.
And, there is something to just being able to, I think, so much of the hang-up with evangelism, so much of the fear is like, gosh, where do I start? What do I say? How do I, this is going to sound so stupid or whatever. And I think if we just start by having conversations with people, and I know, when I engage in evangelistic efforts, I'm always looking for a way in to this conversation. I'm dropping hints about hey, I'm a pastor.
Yeah, well, that's not.
I teach the Bible.
That's not a big hint, a small hint there, bro. That's like laying it all out.
Or I'm kind of exaggerating, but you know what I mean. You're always.
But you want to say to listeners who are not pastors, you can drop small hints.
You can drop hints.
Right.
Yeah, because people inevitably will ask you something. But here's my point. My point is we need to just engage with people in a general sense, and through the engagement, look for the opportunity. And I think that a big part of it is honestly praying as well.
That's good.
Lord, you have people out there that you're already working in them.
Yep.
And they actually need somebody to connect some dots. So connect me to them so I can help them connect some dots.
It's so good.
You're listening to Pastor's Perspective. Brian Broderson and Ed Stetzer are in the studio to answer your questions. The number to call is 888-564-6173. Call us right now and get involved in the conversation. And on this theme of evangelism, we have a Facebook question from a gal who writes in, and her approach is she wants to find a book to give to her brother. Sure, this is her story. She writes in and says, I want to get a book for my brother, who is a prodigal and a huge book nerd, but I'm not sure what would be best for someone like him. Our mom and stepdad raised us as best they could as Christians. However, Kimberly, who writes in, and her two brothers struggled with childhood sexual abuse and trauma at the hands of their babysitter, and she had issues with her boyfriend. We also, she said, we didn't have our biological fathers, so I believe these parts of our lives explain our teenage rebellion, my teen pregnancy, and alcohol and drug abuse in adult years. She also goes on to say, I, by the grace of God, was saved 3 years ago at the age of 25. Now my heart hurts for my brothers. I want them to have what I have. I think that's kind of important.
It's a great language.
Yeah. I want them to have what I have, forgiveness of sins through Jesus Christ and a true relationship with our Heavenly Father. My one brother is a lone wolf and doesn't talk to us anymore, but I'm really close to this younger brother I first mentioned. I feel like a book with the gospel as a gift would help his mind and heart open up a little bit more since his birthday is coming up. I've sown the gospel to him for over a year now. What do you guys think? What would you recommend to Kimberly?
Wow, that's great. What a great opportunity. Yeah, there's so many great materials that are available today. I think sometimes just a good story, a testimonial type of a story can be so powerful. You know, somebody reads about somebody else's story and they resonate with it. There's, of course, books that are more of an apologetic nature if somebody's got questions and wonders about the validity of the Christian faith or, well, how can I believe that the Bible is God's word? So there's lots of things out there. I saw the other day had somebody on the Bill Maher show was one of his guests.
Comedian. Comedian. I think they have it on the Facebook page at KWVE.
I saw that. Yeah. And anyway, he was recommending The Case for Christ because he'd read The Case for Christ, and
Our Friend Lee Strobel
was he was really touched by that. What do you think? Do you got a book that you'd say?
I think partly because, you don't have all the context from a Facebook question.
Yeah.
So, would that person read a Christian book? Yeah. I would love for them to read The Case for Christ would be great. I'd love for them to read Tim Keller, Reason for God would be amazing.
Oh, yeah, Reason for God.
So just yesterday, I was teaching, Wednesday, I was teaching at Mariners, that Wednesday night service. And someone came up afterwards and had a son who's not sure, has questions. And she recommended, there was a book that was recommended that I don't think was particularly helpful. Sometimes books that kind of say they're for non-Christians are really to make Christians feel better about being Christians and not really for non-Christians. So, and this book was clearly that. I tell you the book, but we don't want to say unhappy things about people. So I just said, no, don't read that book. I said, what you want to read is you want to read Reason for God, or the question skeptic ask. Tim Keller recently went on to be with the Lord. But I think something like that is really super helpful, and I would lean in on that. And also, too, since we're talking about books, I would encourage an accompanying book for her. I think it was she, right?
Kimberly, yes.
Kimberly, that's right. Yeah. Kyle Eidelman's book, Praying for Your Prodigal, is kind of a cool book. And so I think we mentioned prayer and evangelism earlier, for you to be praying for your brother, I think it was. But then I would say, any of those books.
Here's a great book I just thought of. Confronting Christianity.
Yeah, sure.
Rebecca McLaughlin. Yeah, fantastic book.
Yeah, it's great.
But again, you kind of, again, like Ed's saying, I mean, we're getting a question over Facebook here. It's a little bit hard to know sometimes, what is the person interested in?
Would they read a Christian book?
Yeah.
And if the answer is those are the ones we'd recommend.
Yeah. Rebecca's book is great because Confronting Christianity, she takes all of the questions that are currently being asked about Christianity, and oftentimes asked with a negative tone. Right. And she addresses them, and she does a superb job. I just read a little tiny book by her, like 60 pages, on Easter, the resurrection.
I'm not sure 60 pages is a book. You've written a book. I've written a book. I'm not sure 60 pages.
No, it's a booklet.
I'm just good. I'm just saying because as someone who's written a book, it's a lot of work. So 60 pages is not enough.
No, I agree. but this was a really great little read. Yeah. So you know what? I would say that's what I would recommend. Rebecca, but gosh, I had the book in the studio and I took it home.
Well, I'm on the page right now. The title of the book, by the way, is "Confronting Christianity: 12 Hard Questions for the World's Largest Religion." And
that's a book. There you go. But the booklet,
I know. I'm looking to see the booklet. I can't, and I'm not seeing it at the moment on her author page. Yeah, so I guess I have failed, but. But yeah, so we're all looking right now. You should be in the studio right now. We're all like searching for the name of this book.
So before this program is over, we will know the name.
We will know. We will tell you.
We will mention it.
And that might be a good short read too. So
yeah, it is. It's a short read and it's excellent.
Yeah, I don't see it. I don't know I don't know. Like, I'm not sure. I believe that you actually saw a 60-page booklet from Rick because it's not online. Does it exist if it's not online?
I just did a promotional thing for it last week because we're going to present it as a gift to our listeners.
So the obvious question is it out yet?
Yes, it's out. Yes,
okay, all right.
All right. Well, it's a great thing that all of our pastors' perspectives.
Easter believable.
It's Easter believable. That's it.
Sorry, Phil.
Oh, there you go. Okay. Very good. Okay.
You found it.
All right. We archive every single pastor's perspective program. And so look forward, according to today's date, when you go on our YouTube channel to find out what's the great list of books to share Christ.
That's cool.
And
it's Easter believable. It's fantastic. And she's got some really great illustrations where she uses like the last James Bond movie. She uses some of Harry Potter, and just the way she kind of weaves those stories into the gospel story. It's really excellent.
Awesome. Where Christ shows up and says, "I'm Christ, Jesus Christ."
Wow. Shaken, not stirred. I got the reference. I'm sure like anybody under 40 can get that reference. Sorry about that. But we're all having a good time right here.
All right. Well, thank you for joining us today here on Pastor's Perspective. Let's go to the phones and check in with Ellie, who's calling in from San Juan Capistrano. She called us at 888-564-6173, just like we invite you to do right now. Give us a call, 888-564-6173. A few lines are open. And Ellie, thank you for your patience and welcome to Pastor's Perspective. How can we help you today?
Yes, you can help me. I've been living with a nice, godly man for the last 5 months, and we've been getting along so great. And it's getting harder to keep away from intimacy upon my behalf. And I was just wondering what scriptures you can give to us all who are in that maybe position, because we are with our boyfriends, and I myself and him are doing biblically, thank God, because I hear through pastor's perspective and family, that show you tell on the air has helped me so much, so much. Pastor, I want you to know.
Oh, that's great.
And I've been doing things biblically because I've been listening to K-Wave over 40 years.
All right.
So I just want to ask you, what should I do now?
Yeah. So, Ellie, is it also a fact that your husband passed away recently, and this is a friend of the family?
He's the best friend of my the man I'm with now.
Okay, yeah.
I met you at church. I gone to Calvary Chapel, and I just love it.
Yeah, good.
And I just want to do the right thing because I love this godly man, and I just want to stay true to him till we get married one day.
Yeah.
And I want to continue to be biblical.
Yeah.
I need scriptures.
Yeah. Well,
and I want to help other people say, listen, people, do not give in sex before marriage.
Yeah.
Please hear me.
Yeah.
Because it's so special afterwards.
Yeah, yeah. So I think, the fact that you guys are living in the same house, there's going to be some temptation that is in that environment that's not going to be necessarily there if you're not in that case. So that's where you guys are at. I mean, you ought to just go get a marriage license and get married.
I just love the clarity of your answer. I know you've talked to this person before, but I'm like, well, let's get more information. Because marriage, just so you know, Brian, marriage is a big commitment.
Well, Ed, I've been 44 years.
I just didn't know if you knew. I just want to make sure you knew.
I've kind of known.
She did ask for Bible verses, and of course, the one that immediately come to mind was 1 Corinthians 7:9. Yeah, better to marry than to burn. So.
But I think based on Ellie's kind of background and experience and stuff, and it sounds like you guys are committed to one another. So you need to just move forward with, just. If you feel like this is what God has for the rest of your lives, I mean, it sounds like you're a little bit older, then you just need to take care of it and don't put yourself in a temptation situation. Just get it taken care of. So we'll finish up with that after the break.
All right. And yes, the music is on. You're listening to Pastor's Perspective, sponsored by Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa. Brian Broderson, Ed Stetzer are answering your questions. I'm Phil Ross in for Brian Perez. Keep it right here. We'll be back in just a moment for more of your questions here on Pastor's Perspective. And we are back on Pastor's Perspective, Friday, February 23rd. I'm Phil Ross, in for Brian Perez, and answering your questions today, we have Brian Broderson, Senior Pastor of Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, and Ed Stetzer, Dean and Professor of Leadership and Christian Ministry at Talbot Theological Seminary at Biola University. And if you would like to get in on this conversation, it's a lot of fun. Give us a call at 888-564-6173. If you have a question about Jesus, the Christian faith, maybe something going on in our culture right now, maybe a personal family issue you've got a question about, please call us right now, 888-564-6173. And before the break, we were speaking with Ellie, and she's in a rather unique situation.
Ed had a
and Ed wanted.
I just had a disclaimer.
Yeah,
that this advice is someone that you have had some relationship with, and this is not the advice for every person in that situation. You didn't say that. I'm just saying, as someone like a professor, I always feel the need to have a couple of caveats after an answer to say that you've obviously interacted with this person before, and because there's a lot of people who what they need to do is to get out of an unhealthy relationship, an unhealthy situation. There's 1,000 variants of that as well.
Exactly. So, yes, and I was speaking specifically to Ellie and her situation.
And everybody knew that, but I just felt it necessary to say that.
Well, that's okay, because that's what you do.
That's what I do. But we're friends. We're friends. We've walked the streets of Jerusalem together.
And other streets as well.
And other streets, yes.
Chicago, New York.
Where else we go?
Oh, you mentioned cities that have decent pizza.
That's true. That's true. When we were on the break, we were talking about pizza, good pizza. And I've lived in New York. I grew up in New York, and I lived in Chicago. And though Chicago pizza is more like, I don't even know how to describe it. It's just like cheese pie. It's like
I'm not a big fan.
No, it's not. I'm not. But New York pizza. Yeah. So I don't know. LA pizza.
Well, we walked the streets of Rome.
We did walk the streets of Rome together. You wouldn't believe the places we've been.
They don't even put sauce on their pizzas in Rome, do they?
They don't need to because it's so awesome.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
It's so awesome. Yeah, we've been around. We've been around the world together. That's kind of crazy.
We walked the streets of Oxford.
We walk streets of Oxford.
That's right.
Feels like we've been just traveling the world for no reason. Just for clarity.
What are we doing?
We were studying. You were doing a master's degree. And anyway, I'm not even at school anymore. Just to plug it every once in a while, I'm at the Talbot School of Theology at Biola University.
Well, we're going to start a new radio show called Travels with Brian and Ed, and I think that'll be a lot of fun. And,
the Biola Hour.
We could do it. I mean, Ed, I travel a lot. Ed, I think he travels more than I do.
I'm cutting back, though.
He's always like somewhere.
Do you know why, though? Because you travel less than me. You can't get anywhere from California. Like I just was asked to do well, there's this big pastors conference I'm going to do in Atlanta, and I was really interested in it. But to speak with them when I speak, I got to fly in a whole day beforehand.
Yep.
And then I got to speak that day, and I can't get out that day. I got to fly the next. So it's 3 days. So when I was in Chicago, you just jump in and out of stuff. But can I tell you, why do we want to leave this paradise in which we live?
Well, and from California, my destinations are generally international. So for me, it's not a problem.
And you go to LAX, but friends don't let friends go to LAX. I've learned that. John Wayne Airport.
Yeah, and my wife, she's got it down. So she's in England right now. She's really coming home via London, San Francisco, Orange County.
To John Wayne. That's the way you want to go. Because LAX, for those, I think this radio program airs outside of the Southern California basin or whatever they call it.
Oh, no. It's
primarily
we're broadcasting right into LAX.
But just I thought we were on other stations as well. Just SoCal.
Yes.
So should we say?
We're on other stations.
Yeah, you're on other stations
across the country. Yeah.
Right. But for those in SoCal, just don't go to LAX.
Everybody in SoCal knows that.
Exactly, it's true. Yeah. But sometimes, like I'm looking, LAX, that's a good flight. I'm like, no, don't do it.
I know my daughter's here from New York, and she's flying home tomorrow night out of LAX, and it's like, dang, how come you didn't do OC?
Yeah. OC's great, and Long Beach is one of the best.
Oh,
at Long Beach, they say, hey, do you want to go on our airplane? We go, okay, sure.
No, it's wild. I flew, there's a direct flight from Nashville to Long Beach.
Yeah.
I was coming back from something in, the Awana. I was doing the Awana National Meeting. Some of you have Awana in your churches. And you fly into Long Beach, and it's like you get off the plane, and you're outside.
And
there's your car.
They used to have a great direct to JFK from Long Beach.
Really? Nice. JetBlue.
JetBlue.
Sorry, we're like, should we get like a sponsor of JetBlue?
Okay. We could. All right. This has been Travels with Brian and Ed.
There you
Thank
go.
you for joining us.
You said you were going to make that the show.
Let's talk to Monica.
All right. And Monica called in on 888-564-6173. Monica in Santa Ana. Monica, thank you for your patience. And how can we help you today?
Hi, pastors. How are you?
Good. Hello? Thank you. How are you?
Oh, okay. Pastor. Good. I go to Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa. Pastor Broderson, you're my pastor. I just want to give you a compliment just to let you know that going to make me cry. That every study that I do from Back to the Basics, I learned so much from you.
Oh, that's great.
I'm able to answer questions and stuff right now. But my question is right now, it's personal. I don't know if you heard what happened with Saddleback Church with that one pastor.
Yeah.
He got arrested for the molestation of some boys. And my question is I'm praying really hard for my family, my son, and my daughter-in-law, and especially my granddaughter, And I wish I could lead them to church, and I pray, but they're non-believers. I try to plant the seed, I'll go to the house and I'll play worship songs, and me and my granddaughter are dancing, and right away my son will come out and he's like, is that a Christian song? He's all, turn it off, please, stuff like that. But I've been praying so hard. Now, when they see stuff like this on TV, how it kind of I'm like, he asks me questions, and I'm like, the Lord will, obviously forgive this person for doing such a hideous crime,
Yes.
And it's like, how do I get them now to go to church? Because they, I have a granddaughter, and you figure you leave them in the hands of, when they have daycare and stuff like that. It's like, they question all that, and so. I get stuck in answering questions,
Yeah, and this is a very, very difficult.
When you're in the book of Jonah and Habakkuk, I'm doing my studies, I'm back to the basics.
Yeah.
And I feel like the way they feel, I feel angry.
Sure.
Not angry at the Lord, but like Jonah kind of.
Yeah.
And Habakkuk, they're like, oh my gosh,
Yeah, and understandably, they should be. Ed knows a little bit more about this than I do.
Well, I just saw it in the Orange County Register, and so a couple things just for context. This is a former Saddleback youth pastor, and this goes back. I think it was again. I don't remember all the specific details, but if I recall, was arrested about 5 years ago, and then another person's come forward, and that's why it's not something that happened yesterday, but it was about 5 years ago, which doesn't at all diminish the seriousness or the importance of this situation. Yeah. But we're seeing this, and we see. Here's one of the things we know. We know that predatory people prey on churches because they're vulnerable targets. Yeah. And so this is why one of the things that for your church and my church our churches do, and everyone's listening, their church should do, is have systems in place for protection and more, and then process in place when survivors come forward as well. So this is but I think our question is the bigger question of, I mean, because if you've just followed the news for the last 10 years, you saw the Catholic Church scandal, the sexual abuse scandal, and maybe we should even say a trigger warning for people who may be survivors as well. And then the Southern Baptist Convention was on the front page of a whole lot of newspapers as well. And then individual churches end up and again, this is where the first step is prevention, and then how do we respond well when survivors come forward? And in this case, this is a legal case. I didn't read anything about how. I think where right now we were very thankful for Andy Wood and leading there at Pastor at Saddleback and more. So I don't know other than the detail I saw that this was a legal case that is resurfaced. But her question is important: is how do we talk about the brokenness of the world and the prevalence of sin and predatory sin in this case?
Yeah, and I think one of the things that you said, Ed, we do everything in our power to prevent those things from happening. Nobody can serve here without going through a pretty rigorous background checks, fingerprinting, all of these kinds of things. We want to know people's history. We want to know if they've got anything in their history that might lend to them, doing something like this. At some point, though, obviously you can't prevent these things. You can do all that. You can take all the precautions and you can pray. But I think going back to the bigger question of the situation with your kids, I think the first thing is just to agree with them that this is horrible. This is absolutely horrible.
So important.
And the fact that this is so contrary to everything that Jesus stood for, everything he taught his followers to do. So this is completely inconsistent with a Christian's life, their faith, their walk. So nobody's given the guy a pass and saying, well, it's wrong.
Right, and it's probably important for your kids to know that. I mean, this would just be. Every Christian church, every appropriate Christian church. I mean, there are certainly some who have failed and not dealt well with these things, but the first response would be just to stand with the survivors, then to be clear about the sinfulness and the crime and more. Yeah. But we do recognize that there is. I mean, this world has bad people.
It's a sinful world. I was listening to a friend of yours today, Ed, Esau McCauley.
Esau, sure.
And he's talking in the context of kind of history and slavery. He's an African-American theologian.
Yeah. New Testament scholar.
Yeah. He was talking about how when you look at American history, you see human, people are made in the image of God. So you see these glorious things that come from that reality that we're created in the image of God. But we're also broken. So then you see a whole nother aspect of history that demonstrates the brokenness of human beings who have been broken by sin. And so this is just the reality of life. There's wonderful things about people, and there are horrible things about people because we're sinners. The hard thing in a situation like this is here's a person who is in Christian leadership, and they are doing horrible things, and that's what makes it very difficult. So.
And rightfully so. We are repulsed by that because we know that that's I mean, it's wrong, but now it's like there's an abuse of power that's there as well. And there's, Diane Langberg writes about this as well. There's several authors that kind of help people to think about the power dynamics of this. But I get at the end of the day, I just agree with Brian. Just to say to them, it is wrong. It is terrible. And and Christians have done, one of the things we mentioned John Dixon earlier coming to the Calvary Global Network Conference. He just said, we can just acknowledge. He has a book called Sinners and Saints. I think it's what it's called. I forget what the exact title is, but now we're going to look because that's what we do here is we have the internet now.
Bullies and Saints.
Bullies and Saints, right. So
the good and the bad in Christian history.
Right, and what he said is, he says an honest look at the good and evil of Christian history. He said that Christians have been on the wrong side and the right side of almost everything. And there have been Christians who've done really terrible things. People identify themselves as Christians, done really terrible things. And then there were Christians really work hard to right the wrong of some of those terrible things as well. Yeah. And so I don't want to pretend that these terrible things don't happen. They do.
And I would say too, Monica, that don't think that this is the make or break moment with your kids. Just keep being who you are. Just keep loving, keep praying. Good. And, people... If it wasn't this, it would be something else. People are looking to kind of avoid God. It's something that's in our sinful human nature. And so, but just through your faithfulness, they see your life. Yeah. They know who you are. And your life in the end, as you follow Jesus, will speak louder than the foibles and the sins of other people. So just be patient.
Yeah, because I've overcame maybe over 18 years of drug addiction, and my life just became about just my testimony is just going through that. The Lord put me in a place, put a roof over my head, fed me, and blessed me with 2 jobs, not just 1 but 2.
Yeah, and that stuff speaks loudly to people, even though they don't say it, even though they might pretend like it isn't affecting them. It does. And with them, there's a timing with people too. And, so just be patient, keep following Jesus yourself, and just the opportunities that come along, share what you can, and then leave the rest in the Lord's hands.
All right. Thank you so much, Monica, for calling in today to Pastor's Perspective. Brian Broderson, Ed Stetzer are answering your questions today. The number to call is 888-564-6173. If you're watching online, you can see it there on the bottom of your screen. If you are streaming the program live today on our flagship station website at kwave.com or on YouTube or Facebook. And now let's go back to the phones. Christine, calling from California, kind of going back to our evangelism topic from earlier. And Christine, you had something that you wanted to add as well. Hi, welcome, Christine.
Yes, hi, thank you. I just want to see if I'm doing the right thing. The girl that called in about her brother, I have the same issue, and I'm constantly telling my brother first. I pray for him constantly, and I do tell him I'm not the one to help you. I could pray for you. I could take you to celebrate recovery. I could read the Bible with you. But you have to accept Jesus into your life and let him take this pain away. And he talks about vengeance. And I say, vengeance is for the Lord. He doesn't want you to dwell on the past. He wants you to accept him into your life. And I just tell him the same thing over and over because I don't know what else to say. And so I just want to make sure I'm just doing the right thing by telling him that and telling him that I do pray for him. And I do because we've all in our family have been through this. And I guess it was the right day to call because it is just out there. We just got to pray for the world, and I don't know what else to tell him. So I just want to sometimes he tries to argue with me that he doesn't need God, that he needs vengeance and on his own. And I just tell him the same thing over. So I just want to make sure I'm telling him the right thing.
Ed?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, bitterness becomes and anger becomes a prison, and we don't know all the details. So much of the challenge on call-in radio is that you don't know all the details, and you do very well. You still just speak into that, but I would say that there's this parable in the New Testament that someone who forgave a debt and someone who didn't forgive a debt. And the person who didn't forgive a debt was then actually punished by the person to whom that person owed a debt. And there's this reference to the torturers. And I think people can torture themselves in a cycle of anger and bitterness that is can become overwhelming. Now, again, I think we can say, and we want justice. And by the way, I think our caller before said that someone could be forgiven of something. Yes, but justice still needs to be had and done. So for me, when I share the gospel with somebody, what I'm trying to do is to help them see. And sometimes it's very much a temporal issue for them. Maybe 50 years ago, people often started evangelism with eternal life. Mm-hmm. And today it's sometimes like, I want you to have like real life and forgiveness and grace and peace that passes all understanding and right now and eternal life. So it's not the exclusion of one to the other. But so for me, I really think that my advice would be to Christine is to stay in the relationship with your brother, to be patient and acknowledge that he may not share currently your beliefs or your values. He may have questions and try to answer those questions, but try to also just be a brother. So a sister in your case, right? Just be a sister to your brother. And then as the Lord opens the doors, because sometimes, I got to tell you, and I can't share the example on the air. I don't think I told you yet, but I'll tell you off the air. Like, I've been sharing the gospel with somebody in my family that I love very much for as long as I've been a Christian, like decades, like 40 plus years. And it was this week we had a spiritual breakthrough. So you just don't know. Yeah. And, part of it is, I think, his confidence in our longstanding, Donna and my longstanding just commitment to the Lord, and even in some of the struggles we've had with parenting and just clinging to the Lord. And so this week, 40 plus years, there's a spiritual movement in his life. And it's like, Lord, you just don't know. Yeah. And thank you, Lord, for your faithfulness.
Yeah. That's so true. Before you said that, I was thinking the same thing. I think we do have a tendency to want to see, and understandably, we want to see everything kind of like move along quickly. We want to see people like hear the gospel and say, yes, I want that. I want to follow Jesus. And sometimes that does happen, but more times than not, it is people are on a journey. Yep. And God He's amazingly patient. I just listened to this testimony a couple of days ago, Ed, that was unbelievable. And it was like a 25-year journey where God is just bringing this guy. He's a well-known novelist. He's, an extraordinary person. He's Jewish background. And, after like 25 years of just literally the Lord himself kind of working in this guy's life, bringing him out of insanity, bringing him through all of these different circumstances in life, suddenly one day he's confronted in his own mind with, you need to get baptized. And he's like,
wow,
whoa, wait a minute. I don't know if I'm up for that. I'm Jewish, and what's it going to look like? And all of this stuff. Well, anyway, he comes to faith. But I keep hearing more and more of these stories where it's a long journey and God's walking people in kind of like a C.S. Lewis story, where he's bringing them along. So all that to say, don't be discouraged and also don't feel, I know a lot of people feel like a failure because, I've been praying for this person and they never got saved. Right. I've witnessed to them and they never got saved. What's the matter with me? Maybe I don't know how to do it right. You know what? Listen, this is a God thing. And so there's a point where, we have our part. We do what we can. There's a point where you just have to leave it in God's hands.
All right. Does that help, Christine?
Actually, it does. And if I could just throw one more thing in there, I actually just got through some things myself. I listen to K-Wave on Sunday. I listen to it almost every day, but on Sunday I definitely do the service with you, Pastor Brian, and I actually had been praying about it, just really praying about it to help me let go of the pain and the hurts of the things that I went through. And I think the Lord answered my prayer because I went to your Sunday night service and I hadn't been to church in 20 years.
Oh, my goodness.
She must have come for the Luke thing. Yeah. We talked about that last week, and now she came for the Luke thing. That's a great...
Well, Christine, that is fabulous. That is so good. And I'm so glad to hear that. And I we'll hopefully see you on Sunday night and even come up and say hi so we can meet.
Sunday night at 6 o'clock. All right, Christine, thanks for calling. Again, Sunday night at 6 o'clock in the Fellowship Hall, the Back to Basics studies.
Yeah, Back to Basics Live, the Gospel of Luke. Man, it just went... Everything that I hoped it would be is exactly what it was.
Yeah, I was on the show last week and you were talking about it, and it was that sounds exciting. I'm going to have to come over.
And you know how sometimes you kind of just envision something like this is what I want to see happen, and then you actually walk into it and that's what happens. And I was like, that. Lord, thank you.
I love that. Did you start with like Luke 1:1? I mean, you're working through the book of Luke?
Yeah, I mean, you know what I did? I did an introduction. I realized that so much happens between Malachi and the beginning of the Gospels.
The intertestamental
I went back to the intertestamental period.
See,
and kind of just walked everybody through.
But God was silent for all that.
Yeah.
Well, or sort of.
In some ways he was,
but he was at work.
He wasn't. Yeah.
He was. Did you talk about the Maccabees? I love the Maccabees.
Oh yeah,
I love
talked about the Maccabees. Yeah, talked about the Hasmoneans.
Nice. Can't go wrong with that. Talk about the Hasmoneans.
Yeah.
Okay, we got time for one last question.
Didn't we? Yes,
one last question. That's okay. And I want to welcome Solomon. Welcome to Pastor's Perspective. You have a question about... What is your question? It's about...
Can you hear me?
Yes, go right ahead. What is your question?
Okay. I just wanted to ask you, there's a scripture that says, in this world or this life, do not expect justice. And I just wanted to hear you... what you thought that meant.
In this world, do not expect justice.
Know that verse. I don't know that that's... okay, so let's just say that we don't recognize that verse, Solomon, and no worries, but there is a sense that people there's a quote that says, never expect justice in the world. That's not part of God's plan. And what I would say is, I think that's you're not going to have ultimate justice in this world. Ultimately, there will come a time when the kingdoms of this world become the kingdoms of our God and King. We enter into the millennial reign, and during that time, we'll see this transformation, and what was wrong will be made right. Every tear will be dried. But maybe that's part of what he's talking about.
Yeah, I mean, there is no. I think it is a reality that we will not see ultimate justice, but there's not a passage that says it. Because so many other passages, like you're alluding to, Ed, with the millennium, we will see justice. Yeah. Jesus will come and he will rule with equity. Yep. He will rule in righteousness.
And we should work for justice here until that time.
Until that time, but we won't see it completely realized until the Lord comes.
And there is that pesky music sneaking in here, letting us know that...
telling us we've
run out of time for today for Pastor's Perspective. Thank you, Ed Stetzer. Thank you, Pastor Brian Broderson. And if you would like more information about the CGN International Conference happening June 23rd through the 26th, again, that's conference.calvarychapel.com. Do check that out. And join us again Monday. We'll be live once again right here on Pastor's Perspective. I'm Phil Ross, and I want to remind you that Pastor's Perspective is brought to you by Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa. We will see you next time.